Hear from businessman Mr. Bill Lee.
Good evening. Thank you very much for those of you who put this event on tonight. It's remarkable. We go to a lot of dinners like this. This one's very well done, very well organized. Thank you very much for having me and Maria, my wife, who has been my side-by-side travel mate 24/7, 7 days a week, all over this state. We're grateful that you welcomed us here tonight. My name is Bill Lee, and I'll tell you a little bit about who I am. My family came to Tennessee 220 years ago. So I'm a seventh generation Tennessean. I live on a cattle farm, a fourth generation cattle farm that my grandfather and father and myself, my grandson lives there as well, my son. We raise Hereford cattle. I've been in, for 4 generations, our family's been deeply involved in the agricultural industry, which is a significant part of what this state is, 13% of the economy, and I've lived that deeply in my life for years. We sell meat to farmers markets and restaurants. Also am in an HVAC electrical and plumbing business called Lee Company. Many of you know that company. We have an office right over here in Cookeville. We have a lot of employees in this area. We actually employ about 1,200, mostly plumbers and pipe fitters and welders and electricians. I have a master plumber's license myself. That's my background. And when I got that license, I never imagined I'd be running a 1,200 person skilled trades company. Men and women that I'm grateful to work around every day. I'm also a guy who finds myself in this unlikely position of running for governor. Never been in politics, never worked for the government, but God has a way of using circumstances in our life to bring us to places. Sometimes those are good and sometimes those are bad. My first wife was killed in a horseback riding accident on a farm. Really tragic experience, an event that many of you may have heard about. I share that, not for sympathy. There would be a lot of painful stories in this room, but I share it because the Lord used that event and that singular event in my life as the most profoundly transformational thing that ever happened to me. It's the most tragic, yet most transformational season of my life. And He walked me through that. And that journey changed my perspective about the rest of my life. How I was going to raise my kids. I was single parented them for 8 years. How I was going to run my company. And my goal became to create what the Tennessean named last year as the best company to work for in Nashville, not just the biggest company. And to spend the rest of my life in ways that would impact other people's lives for good. So I got deeply involved in my community, took my kids all over the world in missions first, but then I got more deeply involved in my community. Chaired the YMCA, met a little kid in the inner city one day, because I worked in the inner city with at-risk youth, and that kid changed my life. But that was 5 years ago. We still meet together every week. Not so much on the campaign trail, but we have up until now. And I got deeply involved in his education. Moved him from, he was in a failing school, moved him to a public charter school where he had a profoundly different outcome. And I had a realization that there are thousands of children in the schools in this state that we owe a better outcome for them because we owe them a better future. I got really interested in public education, education in general, got an appointment to the Higher Education Commission, and started watching public policy being read around something that was life-changing work to me. I had a similar experience because I worked in a prison ministry for many years in this quest for doing life-changing work. And I met a man that was coming out of prison and decided to mentor him. So I spent one day a week in the mornings at 5 in the morning with that man for several years. And we still hang out together. We're very good friends today. That relationship opened my eyes to the world of recidivism, sentencing reform, public safety, things that you and I, most of us, don't have much to do with on a day-to-day basis, but profoundly impact our lives in public safety and the cost of corrections. I became passionate around that subject as well. Got an appointment to state task force on recidivism and sentencing reform. and started watching public policy again being made around a subject that I was deeply interested in. So I had worked, because I was a business guy, I'd worked in tort reform as well, legislation around that. And so I was a guy who found myself out of a quest for doing life-changing work and work that impacted other people's lives, touching government in multiple places, and realizing that I had spent most of my life trying to make life better for 1,200 plumbers and pipe fitters and welders and electricians and their families. What if it was my job to make life better for 6.5 million people? And could a guy like me, who hasn't been involved, actually aspire to the highest office of the executive branch of government? Now, I've had a life of executive leadership. And so I not only decided that I could do that, but really when the Founding Fathers framed this government and this experiment of creating this nation, they knew that self-governance really meant people like you and me, we the people, becoming engaged in the public square. So Maria and I talked about that, prayed about it actually for a year, and made the decision to run. So last April we announced, we bought an old RV, which you saw, you might have seen out in the parking lot, and we launched a campaign out of a desire to serve people in this state and to make life better for 6.5 million people. We went to 95 counties in 95 days, which sounded like a really great idea when we started out. It actually turned out to be a really great idea. It was just a really blistering schedule, but which kind of hadn't stopped since. But we traveled this state, and y'all, we live in a remarkable state. Y'all know that. Remarkable people, remarkable state. But we have some really troubling challenges in our state. And some of them have been talked about tonight. When we went on that tour, I grew up farming, and I grew up in a rural environment, and I know how valuable and fundamental that is to our state. And we are, in fact, at risk of losing a way of life in rural Tennessee and small towns. And if we don't do something definitively about it, we will lose that way of life. And I'm a guy who's deeply committed to restoring and to maintaining a way of life in the state for rural Tennessee. There is a comprehensive approach to doing that, but what it's going to really just take is someone who understands it and is committed to the restoration of that way of life. We do have 19 counties in poverty. 5 years ago, we had 18 counties in poverty. What we're doing is not working, and we need a different approach to that. Part of the other thing we found this week, there's a lot of talk about vocational technical education and the need for, in rural communities and in the inner city as well, where I've worked quite a bit, for transformation there as well. This is not a new subject. It may be on the campaign trail, but for my industry, who employs hundreds of skilled tradespeople, a guy who has a master plumber's license and knows that world, a guy who started a trade school 10 years ago in our company because the problem is so bad, because for 30 years we've ignored this in our public school system. I started a trade school, and we've run 1,000 skilled tradespeople through that program. This is something that I've lived for all of my working career, and when I become governor, our high schools are going to look different because they're going to have career paths and opportunity for those 4 out of 10 kids who don't go to college and who are gifted in significantly other ways than that. There are other things we found. I can't begin to explain all we found. I'll tell you what we're doing right now. That we love, that Maria and I are loving, is we're calling it a Faith in Tennessee tour. We did a rural road tour. We drove my tractor from Mountain City to Memphis. Maria followed me in a pickup truck to bring awareness to the rural issues. We're doing a Faith in Tennessee tour right now. My relationship to Christ is the most important thing in my life, and that will never change, even and especially when I become the governor. And I believe that our religious liberty is under attack. I believe that political correctness pushes aside principle. I believe that government is not the answer. I can't go into all my conservative views because I'm a very conservative guy, and I believe that a small government is always better. But faith and family and community hold the keys to the future for many of the problems that we have in this state. Maria and I are traveling the state talking about the role of the faith community in Tennessee's future. We visited 25 faith-based nonprofits from one end of the state to the other. And as governor, I'm going to have an office of faith-based initiatives, a liaison between nonprofits and the government to make it easier and create an environment where they can thrive. These are just a few of the things and the ideas that I have. My heart, I'll close with this. My heart is to bring my life experiences of executive leadership and nonprofit passion and real world experience, my life of ag in rural Tennessee, and to bring that to bear into government that so desperately needs more than ever outside influence. I have a great deal of hope for this state and for what it can become. On the side of that RV, there's a scripture reference, Psalm 71:14. It says, "As for me, I will always have hope." And I had some deeply hopeless days in my life, but I knew where to find it. And I know that we can find it. And there's great hope. Not only that Tennessee can be a better place to live and that we can resolve some of these challenges, but that we can actually lead the nation. I believe deeply that Tennessee can lead the nation. And it's going to take the right kind of leadership to do that. I also believe that the most powerful form of leadership is servant leadership. And I would be honored to serve you, to have your vote, to be the one who leads Tennessee as it leads the nation. Thank you very much.